New Level Cap Podcast is a show about fun, friends, game design, and all things otherwise. Your hosts are Marco DeSantos and Brad Telton of Level 99 Games. I'm Chris Solis, your producer, and without further ado, please enjoy the show.
Welcome, friends, Romans, countrymen, to the experience of a lifetime, the experience of the Level Cap Podcast, brought to you by your hosts. I'm D. Brad Telton Jr., and my splendiferous co-host,
Marco, the Splendiferous DeSantos.
also known as Mechanic Critic Trademark.
Double Cap Podcast TM. Copyright.
TM and copyright 2019 Level 99 Games, all rights reserved, patents pending.
That's a lot of patents and a lot of pending stuff, Brad.
Yeah, most of that stuff I'm probably not legally allowed to say.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you're not allowed to say patents pending unless you've actually applied for a patent, which, podcasts can't actually get unless you're inventing the concept of podcasts and not an individual podcast.
Can we do parents pending?
Parents pending?
Yeah.
I don't think that any of us are parents yet. So.
How about what if we're about to get parents?
We're about to get parents? Well, wait, are you being adopted, Marco?
Maybe.
Has somebody finally decided to take you in?
Yeah, they're adopting me into their Exceed family, where I will continuously get demolished by all of these better Exceed players.
I see.
Brad, welcome to the show, and I'm so happy you're here because I'm excited to introduce a new segment to you and all of our fans.
All right, so what do we got new this week?
Yeah, so Brad, here's my new segment. It's called, I asked Brad a question about updates for Level 99 games for like a few minutes. Is that a good segment name, or do you want to like change it?
So you're saying it's not just a news segment, it's like a news segment.
Hey, what do we call it? Do we just call it News 99 again? Is it just still News
Sure.
99?
I think putting a short News 99 at the beginning of each episode is a nice way to do it. Let people know what's going on in the world of Level 99 games.
Yeah, Brad, so what's happening in the world of Level 99 games? Give me a short News 99. What have you been doing?
Sure. So we got a few things that are up recently. We just sent Imperial Spells and Steam, the base game, off to press. We just sent Pixel Tactics Legends off to press. We are preparing now to print Battlecon Wanderers, now that Daijin and Feilana are finished up. So
Excuse
we
me.
got a lot of games.
Sorry, asterisk. The character's name is the Jin.
Daijin, yeah. Say whatever. Okay, Marco. You know names. This is the show where names don't matter.
All right. So long as we understand what you meant. All right. So we're printing Wanderers. What else?
So our creative director, Laura Levito, has moved on to other things. So we have this great gaping void in our souls and our office.
Our Dark Souls?
Yeah, in our Dark Souls. We're looking for new talent to fill in the gaps and to carry us forward. Anyway, so that's what I've been doing. I've mostly been job searching. Not job searching, but searching for applicants to do jobs.
So,
in the past few days.
what if a listener has these special set of skills, Liam Neeson style, and they want to find you and apply, Brad? Is that a thing the listeners can do if they're a qualified individual?
Yeah, if you're a qualified individual, or if you know a qualified individual, you can just use the contact form on our website, contact us, send over a CV, and let us know why you think you'd be great for the job. And I'll reach out and chat with you.
Oh, that's so great. Brad,
Yeah.
I felt really relieved by that segment, and I love it. We should do it every week.
Sure. It's nice to keep up with things.
All right. Okay, but Brad, as much as I would love to keep talking about what's happening this week, the episode for this podcast is actually going to be a mega news drop because we're going to be talking about something that even I didn't know about until you told me about it for this episode of the podcast. It blows my mind.
So this episode's theme is about creating experiences.
Yep.
And in that episode, I wanted to talk about some of the upcoming games that we are working on and how we're creating experiences. So we'll probably be talking a little bit about Seventh Cross, because that's definitely an experiential game that we built. And we'll also be talking about a game that I'm currently working on that's early in the prototype phase, called Airy, Artisans of Indians.
All right.
And that's in very early development, but getting the experience right for that game has been a big part of our work so far. And I'm pretty happy with how it's turning out. Things are certainly coming together.
That's right, podcast listener. Oh, you get access to this hot news that Brad hasn't even announced anywhere yet. And oh gosh, I'm so excited. But
still in development.
Hey, Brad, you just
original game, do not steal.
Original game, do not steal, or we will have Son Goku eat you. There you go. That's our. We can say that legally, right? Like that's
you can, but I don't think you can follow through on it.
Yeah, but I can say it legally. I will not get sued for saying so, right? Or does that count as a threat?
With the state of the world today, I think you can even make generalized radio threats and get away with it.
Okay, good to know. But before we move on to talking about all of this hot design games that haven't been announced yet, what the heck is an experience, Brad? Tell me what an experience is, at least in the context of game design. Because to me and my puny little video game brain, all I can think about is experience points for levels.
Okay, well, so an experience is the feeling that the game promises to provide you. You pick it up on the shelf, or you see it online, or you click the purchase button on the website. This is the nostalgia, the forward anticipation of promised feeling that you experience. And then if the game is good, then it fulfills that experience, and you feel the way that you anticipated you would feel when you play it.
I see. So this is like, okay, so maybe this is actually something I actually know about. Because instead of using the word experience, I often use the word fantasy, right?
Yeah, it's the fantasy the game provides, or you might even say it's a contract between the designer and the player. Like, I promise that I'm going to provide a certain kind of experience, feeling, activity, and the better the game delivers on that, then the better you feel about the purchase that you've made.
That's actually really, really important, and goes directly back to episode 1, if you have not listened to it. Purpose and design, again, there's like some sort of contract between you and the designer and the intent of the game, so on and so forth. So, for people who don't know, an example of an experience would basically be like the fantasy of when you play a strategy game, it's about being this general who's commanding an army and you feel like you're making all of these cool tactical maneuvers and you feel smart. Or, for example, when you're playing, I don't know, a character action game like Devil May Cry, and you're going around, you're supposed to feel powerful, like you can use all these cool weapons and you're awesome, and by executing on that, the game makes you feel like an awesome demon hunter, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with Exceed, I want to feel like I'm playing this fast-paced flow of fighting game, that I'm taking on the role of a character, or in Imperial, that I'm a railway magnate, or in Pixel Tactics, that I'm playing in this tactician, this kind of 8-bit universe. An experience cannot always be easily defined, but you sort of know in your heart what it is going to be, right? Like when you pick up a game, you understand there's this sort of unsaid, unwritten a feeling, but you definitely feel it, and you feel that this is going to make you feel a specific way. And if you don't feel that, then you put it down and you move on to the next thing.
So, Brad, here's a quick question. Is delivering on an experience essentially the be-all, end-all when it comes to saying that the game is good?
I think it is. I think it absolutely is. Because even a really great game, if it doesn't deliver the experience that it promises to you, is going to fall flat. So, for example, let's take Fallout 76 in the video game world. Players were promised a Fallout game, but they were delivered an MMO instead. And the MMO was okay, but as a Fallout game, it was terrible. As an MMO, maybe it was okay, but if they had sold it as an MMO and not as a Fallout game, players would have reacted a lot differently. And Fallout, probably wouldn't have been so bad for a game that wasn't really finished.
I hate the pun that you just made. It made me so upset in my heart of hearts, and I love it. A lot of board games kind of do this, so usually abstract games kind of like do this, where they fail to deliver on an experience a lot of the time, because it's just a bunch of mechanics that don't really cohesively gel together into an experience that's actually that good.
Well, the experience that you get with an abstract game, the experience that you get is that you're going to sit across from another player and play a board game, right? It's the experience of chess or of being some sort of mastermind in an abstract sense. And those games deliver on that feel. but that the appeal of that feel is limited. That's the limited appeal of abstracts.
It's abstract, as you could say.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, recently I got a chance to play the Batman Gotham City Chronicles game. Have you seen this one, Marco?
Is it the Telltale game?
No, it's the really giant Batman board game that was kickstarted like 2 years ago.
Oh, then definitely not. I have not played that.
So it's quite cool. The minis are cool. The boards are cool. The game is really a piece of art. We played our third game of it yesterday, and we finally got the hang of it because the first time we were trying to just Rambo through and beat up everybody, like Arkham City style, like the video games.
Okay.
But in fact, it's a lot more like the Detective Batman game where the Batman players like decided, oh, well, we got to get here and do this and do that. And so they brought certain gadgets like, explosive gels and smoke grenades and such so that they could ninja their way through without fighting the majority of the thugs. They had just had to beat Penguin and Dr. Death and get through the scenario and managed to do it in 3 turns with a cohesive plan. So it was really lightning quick. And once they started treating the game more like a puzzle than a brawler, we started to understand the true experience. It's nice because Batman can be expected to deliver both the brawler and the detective type experience. But if we had gone in and expecting just a brawler game, and we had instead discovered, oh, this is like a puzzle game, we probably wouldn't have enjoyed it very much.
I see.
So thankfully the license of Batman allows you to do both and have both kinds of games in there.
Well, yes, I'm quite disappointed that being a brawler is not the optimal way to play.
It is for some situations, Marco.
Okay, fine.
Brawler is a sometimes thing.
Brawler is an always thing, Brad. How dare you?
Brawler is love. Brawler is life.
Brawler, oh no, Shrek. Alright, Brad, so if it is the be-all, end-all of a good game experience, and understanding the fantasy is part of that contract that you make with the developer and the player, what's an example? How do you make a thing that will deliver an experience well?
Well, the most important thing is to just settle on an experience. But once you settle on the concrete experience and you communicate that to your team, then from there it's a lot easier to get it all together. I mean, we're skilled people. We understand what an experience is, and we understand how art and graphic design and mechanics all come together to create an experience. So that's not the hard part. The hard part is settling on what the experience truly will be. And we had a lot of these snafus early in 7th Cross development, actually.
Uh-huh.
So we were working on this game, and we knew that we kind of wanted it to be a, Castlevania, Dark Souls, so definitely a Cry board game. But we really didn't understand for a long time what the experience was going to be. We said, you're going to go through this castle, you're going to get changeable equipment, there's going to be gating, just like in a Metroidvania, and also there's going to be giant monsters that chase you around the castle, etc., etc. We went into that with so many different versions, and what we found was that the experience we were trying to create was just too big. It didn't all fit in the way that we really wanted it to. We couldn't deliver that whole experience in a single game sitting. And so we had to pare it down.
So you had scope creep or something? Like, you essentially were aiming for too wide or too big.
Yeah, we were aiming for too wide. We couldn't deliver all of that experience in one product. And so we decided to prune down, and we decided to make the game solely about the exploration of these castles and the fighting of big giant monsters. And by taking out a lot of the mechanics from the exploration, by taking out mechanics from platforming and searching locations and building this giant sprawling Metroidvania map on the board, we decided to just keep all the mechanics in the combat zone. So we have these really big detailed boss fights with giant lethal bosses, and you fight multiplayers fully cooperative against the game. And we've got that, a nice clear cut experience that we're going to deliver, and it came out so much better.
So much like in almost everything when it comes to design, focus and an understanding of your intent or goal is key to delivering on a good experience. And trying not to be too ambitious might be good, right? I think that's a big trap that a lot of designers or even people like me fall into, is that when we make a game, we get too granular immediately we feel that emulation and simulation and perfect, one-to-one correspondence between intent and mechanic is important. When in reality, everything should get pruned down to the point wherein everything in the game just contributes to the experience, as opposed to, I have to model exactly jumping on a 2-degree plane with an XY value of my velocity. Like sure, that emulates it better, but does it really help the experience is the real question.
Yeah, and so this is kind of what happened to the game that I'm working on right now in development called Airy, Artisans of Indians. This is another game in the world of Indians, and it's kind of follows the saga of like Argent and Imperial. This one's sort of a precursor to Imperial, and you're in this frontier boomtown in the world of Indians, and you are a shopkeeper, tinkerer, and explorer on the frontier. And so the idea of this game is sort of, it's based in the Atelier series, it's based in Reciteer or Moonlighter. It's sort of the fantasy of being in a small town and building up that town and becoming a rich and successful business person who also isn't afraid to get their hands dirty on an adventure or two.
I see.
So it's sort of about making your own way on the frontier in a fantasy sense.
Is this capitalism's fantasy simulator?
Kind of. It definitely is. And we originally went really heavy on the adventuring. Like there were 6 different locations you could adventure to, and they each had different kinds of materials that you could find, and then you bring those materials back and you build, all kinds of stuff. But the pace of the game was glacial when we had all those mechanics. It was so slow because there was so much to do and so many things to think about. And we had to figure out what's the real target experience, because we knew we needed there to be exploring, but it didn't need to be that detailed. And actually, when we took out the multiple locations, we put one target exploration location in. So when you explore, you just go to the outskirts and you find what you find. But because you're finding random stuff and you don't have that much control over what you find, it actually helps the economy, because that means now the other players have to buy and sell from your shop because they can't find the stuff they want. They have a bunch of junk that they need to get rid of. So you end up creating a very dynamic player economy by taking out a lot of the control and adventuring.
Which makes sense, right? And overall, again, back to the main point, these point towards the main experience you want, which is less so going out and adventuring and way more managing this item shop that you have, right? Because that's the experience you have. And not maybe even the item shop, because at the end of the day, I think the core experience is this other mechanic that you have not yet mentioned, which is the pot? The alchemy pot?
Yeah, the cauldron, so synthesis cauldron. You make stuff, and you take these different materials that you find, you arrange them on a grid in a certain way, and then poof, you get an item. And actually, there's an element to the item shop that's really interesting, because not only can you sell the materials that you find and don't need, but you can also rent out the gadgets that you make to the other players. So I can put an item that I make on rent in my storefront, and you can rent that item from me and use its abilities. And so that's really cool. There are multiple strategies. I don't just have to focus on getting and selling stuff to run my store. I can also focus on being a really good service shop and offering more services to the rest of the town. So it creates a really cool player-driven economy that is really reminiscent of Millennium Blades, actually. And that's one thing that I'm really loving about this game, is that it's Millennium Blades, but it's much more focused on the player-player economy than the collection of a bunch of trading cards that are going to win you the tournament.
Brad, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm making a heart symbol right now with my 2 hands, because Millennium Blades' economy is my favorite thing, and the one thing that I feel Millennium Blades lacks is, like, trading between players, because oftentimes players just don't want to trade, because they know
and often there's not enough time to trade.
Yeah, there's not enough time to trade, and even if there is, people don't feel incentivized to do so, because they're like, oh, if I give you this, then it's more likely that you're going to win in the tournament, so it's better to not give you this, even if it would help.
That came up a lot in our early tests of Airy as well, but it really, after a few rounds, it went away. Like, players realized somebody bought something off of one of our players, and now I've got all this gold, but I don't have the item I needed to build with. But now I have all this gold, so I can just buy the other things I want from the next player down the street. And also, when you use the synthesis cauldron to make things, like there are remnants that get left behind. So even if somebody buys something from you, it may remain for you to use later.
Yeah.
So it's a riskier play, but you can just sell everything, even the stuff you want, in hopes that it'll be available for you later on in the game.
But here's the cool thing that I don't think you've mentioned yet is that sometimes you don't even get the choice to hold on to the things you want.
Oh, that's true.
Because there's no such thing as an inventory in this game. Based on what I've read, your inventory is your shop front.
Right, so you can only put things on sale. The question is, how high can you raise the price to scare off the other players from taking things from you? And the shops are different too. Like if you get the character who's more of a storekeeper type character, they'll have more shop slots, and they can buy and sell more cheaply from the NPCs in town. If you get somebody who is a thief, they can take things from your expensive slots at a discount. There's a lot of different opportunities for storefronts. Like an inventor will have more rental slots and fewer storage slots.
Oh, that's cool. And I bet somebody's really good at doing alchemy or something.
Yeah, there are characters that are good at all the different things. So this game really supports a really diverse variety of talents and casts.
Well, Brad, if this is a level 99 games game, of
course. And so, of course, you have asymmetric characters, and you have a ton of replayability, and you have a modular setup. All the things that you'd expect from a game by level 99.
Yeah.
In our sort of hybrid Euro line. And this is definitely fits into that hybrid Euro line.
So fans of Millennium Blades, Argent, and Imperial might find themselves attracted to this new game.
Yeah. But we shouldn't talk about it too much. This is like the next thing after 7th Cross. So, and you know how long that's taken. So I don't want to get everybody too hyped.
All right.
But this will be a bit less complex than 7th Cross. So that'll be nice too.
7th Cross is a sprawling adventure with modules and an actual plot. So
that's true.
So I mean, yes, I can understand the scope creep. But I also understand that this is probably not going to take as long as 7th Cross.
One hopes.
Well,
hey, let's go to the break, and we can talk more about fulfilling the experience when we get back.
All right, Brad, fulfill my ad experience.
Want a game with other Level 99 Games fans, such as yourself? Join the official Discord channel. You can find the invitation link in the description below.
Hello, and welcome back from the break. Hopefully, you are now experiencing the new experience that we have crafted for you. This is no longer simply a podcast about game design. It is now a homie policy, and I am Sherlock Holmes. And I'm going to tell you the advantages and disadvantages of having and fulfilling that game experience. Bradson, which is kind of like Watson plus Brad. I'm not sure if that works.
Well, Holmes, I don't think you should set the listeners up for an experience that you don't plan to sustain and deliver through the final 15 minutes of this episode.
Oh, very valid point, Watson. But it's quite elementary. See, we simply pretend it never happened. Hi, everyone. Welcome back from the break. Totally nothing happened.
Wow, they dropped that quick.
Totally nothing happened. 5 minutes ago, nothing happened. Retcon,
See,
TM.
Now, the way that you could destroy the experience is you could put the Mystery Game Design Hour, Brad and Marco, as the title for this podcast, and then you won't deliver on that.
That'd be so meta. I just named this episode like Marco and Brad do a Sherlock Holmes board game, and then we don't even talk about it. So that's how you'd break an experience or a promise. Brad,
this is how you break a promise to your fans.
Yeah.
Level Cap Podcast.
Lie to them.
Wow, Marco.
Level Cap Podcast, the final episode, and then the screenshot is like me with like a red circle around my face, and then a picture of you with your pipe, and then outside of the pipe there's like a ghost. I don't know. But none of that happens in this episode. What happens in this episode, we talk about the positives and the negatives, and ultimately, here's the big thing. I don't think there's necessarily with the positive.
There's certainly no downsides to fulfilling the experience that you promise, and there's only upside. So I think really what we probably want to talk about is, more importantly, process of setting good expectations, and then the pitfalls that can lead you away from fulfilling your expectations.
Exactly.
So how to set them up, how to knock them down.
Exactly. So this isn't us going to be telling you, hey, it's good if you deliver what you promise on, and it's bad. But it's more of like, how can you do this well, and how can you so mess up, right? So essentially, when you deliver on that experience, it's very, very good, but it requires a lot of good expectation management, really.
Everything that you do, you should be leading towards creating this experience. And anything that doesn't support that experience, you ought to take out. It needs to be culled pretty ruthlessly from a game design.
Wow.
And so that's what the session that we reached with Seventh Cross was. The experience here is that we're badass monster hunters in this dark world with, fighting these crazy, destructive bosses. And then, sometimes we have the odd goblin coming in. No, we don't even want to, if we're truly, Devil May Cry level monster hunters, then when a weak sauce goblin shows up, we just execute it instantly. And it shouldn't even be there. So we cut all the minions out of the castles, and we just put in the big bosses because they're the only thing that are a challenge to our experienced monster hunters.
They're the only things that are worthy of actually being played.
Same thing, when you explore, you want your characters to be exploring and doing cool stuff, and we want it to be unique. Well, we had a bunch of mechanics for exploration that were like press your luck mechanics, and you could match up different symbols to traverse the castle in different ways. And we're like, well, it feels pretty mechanical. What I really want is, because Lucia can climb with her chains, she sees a window, and she can scramble up a wall that nobody else can. So really, the only way to make it cool is to make it narrative. And so we cut the mechanics for exploration, and we instead added narrative mechanics for exploration, where a character who reaches a certain point in the story and survives to that point in the story can do things that other characters can't.
Quick aside, if you're very much interested in all of this and want to know more about how Seventh Cross implements this, listen to one of the older episodes of the Level Cap podcast where we talk about branching path mechanics. We talk a lot with the writer for Seventh Cross, Chris Longhurst, about how we did that. So do check out that episode. I think I'll link it in the card somewhere, or I'll link it in the description of the podcast and or the video you're watching. Brad, aside from that, I do think it's very important that culling the fat from a game experience isn't just on a grand scale. It also heavily applies to just the stuff you add into the game. So for example, in a game like BattleCon, it's not just about huge mechanics, it's about, if your beefy juggernaut character suddenly has a style that says, yes, but now you are fast and don't hit for so much damage. It makes no sense. So you have to cull that too. Because
each of these characters comes with a different experience. And so this is a way that you have the same idea of you are delivering it on a character-by-character basis. So when I play the big heavy robot, or I play the lightweight martial artist, or I play the transforming T-1000 robot, those each promise a different kind of experience to me and should fulfill that experience through the play. And I think that this is the real appeal of BattleCon, is that each of these characters is going to provide a totally different experience and is going to give you new mechanics that you've never seen before to support that experience.
For sure. And I think there's a quote on Board Game Geek that I often now just quote whenever people ask about designs and BattleCon and stuff. And essentially you say, at the end of the day, we're not making characters to be fun. We're making characters to provide an experience,
The fun comes from you. I think that's true of all games, right? A game can't be fun, but players can have fun playing it.
Ah, now that's very interesting. I like that point.
But, yeah, a game in the box on the shelf is not fun. The fun comes from within you.
The fun was in you all.
The fun was in you all along.
Yes, exactly, Brad. So this is how we're setting it up, right? We need to understand the expectations of our players. We also need to understand that we have to cull everything that doesn't fulfill those expectations, especially because we, as the designers, are the ones setting those expectations. So we have literally no excuse, right?
Right.
Brad, what happens when we also fail to meet these expectations?
Well, there are a lot of ways to fail, and I think that you should more consider the different ways to fail. Like we talked about in this episode, one way that you can do it wrong is you can just have too much stuff. You can focus on the wrong kinds of the experience, right? So, for example, a game that tries to be a side-scroller game And so they have cards like, like jump and shoot and walk, or even cards that are just the different buttons on a controller that you have to play in sequence to do the thing you want to do. And that level of, are we fulfilling the fantasy of mashing buttons on a controller, or are we providing the experience of actually kind of beat 'em up gameplay, but in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Through a different medium. And so the experience that you're creating is not one, well, it is one of simulation, but you're not simulating the activity of playing another game, you're simulating the experience of another game in your own way.
I think that's one thing that's very important to understand, is that providing or fulfilling an experience is almost never about simulation. Like, almost never. Right? Like you can't just look at the game experience and go, Dark Souls did this thing where you died 7 times in a row, so our game has to involve you dying.
Or Dark Souls does this thing where every time I lose, I have to start over again. So when I make the Dark Souls board game, every time I lose, I should start again from scratch. Because that is the Dark Souls board game. It's terrifying.
I know. I've played it. It's absurd.
Because in Dark Souls, the sequence is 30 seconds, but in the board game, that sequence is an hour. So you really want to be careful about creating the experience and not an emulation.
Yes.
Of a different experience. So the other thing is, you could just be wrong about the experience you're delivering, or you don't sync up with with the people that are selling the game. If the team that is selling and pushing the game doesn't understand the experience the game creates, then you can have a bad situation. So, and this was like what we talked about with Fallout 76. The experience of playing the game is just not the experience of a Fallout game. It's the experience of an MMO.
Yeah.
That happens to be set in the Fallout universe. So we have to be really careful that all of our team members understand the experience and are all on the same page, that we as a team are cohesive in what we're delivering.
That's completely true. But also, as an extension of this in a way, it's not just that there's a missync between the sellers and the creators of what the experience is, but it's also very common for a designer to not even understand the experience they're trying to provide. Or rather, they are promising something that the players expect to be one thing, but they end up making another. So, again, I guess this involves the Dark Souls board game, where, people are expecting this to be a hard game that does a thing that makes you, intricate combat and all that stuff, because that's what Dark Souls is to them. But it seems like to the creators, Dark Souls is just, let's make you suffer the entire time, because that's the ethos of Dark Souls. But in reality, to many players, it's not. That's not what Dark Souls is.
There are a lot of great examples of this in board gaming. The Others is a great example. One of the games, because when you read the Kickstarter page for that, you think it's going to be this heavy moral choice game with these characters that can be turned evil by tempted by these sin characters that you're trying to fight, who are basically Cthulhu monsters. But when you sit down and play the game, it's more like a tactical skirmish, and the moral choice turn evil mechanic is just that each time I decide to push my dice harder, I get a little bit of an evil point, which gives me another ability, and if I run out of those, then I die. And it just doesn't feel like I don't get to know the characters in the way that was kind of promised that I would get to know them.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty rough. I think this is a big problem where sometimes theme gets tacked on to mechanics, and again, this is why I brought up.
Well, or sometimes the theme is there and the mechanics are there, but we realize that the mechanics are not supporting a good gameplay. Like, it's too big. It's really hard to put a moral choice system into an action game, and that's what we learned in 7th Cross, is that the task is monumental, and we kind of have to put that entirely in the narrative section, because there's really no way to bring it out in combat.
Well, obviously, the answer is that you can choose to kill the boss lethally or kill the boss non-lethally, like a la Metal Gear style. Yeah.
I guess when your monsters are Cthulhu bosses, there's no non-lethally killing. You just got to get rid of them. They got to go.
Are you sure? Are you sure I can't hit them with like a Mozant whatever trank?
I'm pretty sure. Tranks don't work on the old ones.
All right. Well, Brad, as much as I'd like to keep rambling, there is a certain expectation that we have to fulfill, and that's we tie a little bow at the end of this podcast. So, Brad, final word about experiences. If you had to give one quotable quote to budding game designers about fulfilling an experience or delivering an experience, what would it be?
I'd say consider experience first before anything else. And create the experience, not the experience of doing something, but the experience itself.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And I hope you agree when I say thank you so much for listening to this episode of the New Level Cap podcast. I'm so glad that you are all here to listen to us. Now, we've made some changes for this episode. Again, we added a new segment at the start. Tell us how you feel about that, and I would love to hear your opinions. I read every single one and reply to every single one. As usual, that's been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as the Mechanic Critic, and with me has been my amazing co-host who is delivering a great experience right now.
Brad Tom, thank you all so much for listening. It's been great to chat. And me and Marco see ya same next week, same bat time, same bat channel.
Same bat time? Are you talking about Batman again?
Yeah, that's a Batman.
What do you call it when you love Batman so much? Kind of like the weeb loves anime? Is there like a Batman weeb thing?
I don't know. Happy gaming, everybody.
Now, don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indians. Thank you, and good night, dweebs.
Dweebs? Oh, no, I don't think so.
No? Alright.
It'd be dweebs with the B.
Dweebs! I like it.
The New Level Cap podcast is produced by Level 99 Games. Join us next Wednesday for more design talk and shenanigans. Thank you for listening.